Welcome back to Open Line tonight. We are talking about the Ahmaud Arbery case and all the intricacies that will go in as this is tried in the upcoming months, maybe a year from now. We have two attorneys joining us to walk us through the case from their perspective tonight. We have Mark Scruggs, a defense attorney here in Nashville, and BJ Buchanan joining us from Georgia, where he practices civil law. I promised before the break we would get right to the phone calls, and so that is what we will do. Bob is joining us tonight. Bob, thanks for being with us.
Yes.
Go ahead with your question or comment.
I just have a comment. You know, what happened is really bad, but it's made national news. You know, let's look at the facts. Let's look at the numbers. You know, 13% of the population is black, 7% is women, 6% is men. Probably 2.5% are in the state penitentiaries, but we never ever discuss black crime on white. You know, we never discuss rape, black men raping white women. We never discuss black men robbing white people, because you don't do that. But it's because now it's made national news. A black man has been murdered. And I'm not taking I have no idea what happened. And it looks ugly. But it would have never made national news if a black man had murdered a white man. You know, it's just, you got to look at the numbers, and you got to be realistic about what's happening in this country. And that's all I got to say.
Okay, Bob, everybody's entitled to their opinion. Thank you for calling in. Let's go to Bridget on the line. Bridget, thanks for being with us. What's your call about?
Yes, thank you so much for taking my call.
Sure.
And I completely agree with the other two callers. I really don't think this is political. I think this is right and wrong. And I also think that that last caller, you know, if you want to do numbers, let's do the numbers about how many blacks are in jail opposed to how many whites, how many blacks get a decent bail opposed to whites. It's always, well, they did this and they did that. We all know that black people are more apt to get prosecuted, accused of doing the wrong thing than a white person. Just like now, I'm listening to them, and they're saying, well, I'm sorry, I'm listening to the other attorney that spoke about, you know, where they can say, you know, well, you know, what did the crime? Did he run? Did he defend? Anybody can plainly see that those men ambushed him. Come on now. This is the problem. Everybody has rights. Our ancestors worked this land, and we have just as much right to run, walk, hop, skip as anybody. And that last caller, sir, you are racist. Because that is not even what this is about. It's about them gunning down an unarmed man. Let's call it what it is.
Yeah, Bridget, I think you bring up the elephant in the room here, and I'm sorry to not have addressed it before now, but this is going to be I guess what keeps us in the national headlines is so much of this is going to come down to race. And I think it does go back to my first question of, why has this case been treated like a hot potato down there, BJ? It has been passed off. The blame is being passed off. Why charges weren't brought for 2 months? Can you speak to this issue, BJ?
Well, one thing I would say, the initial prosecutor on the case, for whatever reason, and I'm not going to speculate what his motivation behind it was obviously reluctant and had some motivation not to pursue the case. Was it because of a friendship or relationship with the McMichaels, or was it because the victim was a black man in this situation? I don't know, but obviously it doesn't appear that this case was handled properly. If this was going on, if this happened on I believe February 23rd, the initial prosecutor declined to file charges and eventually recused himself. It's gone through several prosecutors, and there was a debate whether or not to bring charges or not. Then the case breaks national news. The GBI gets the case, they review it in 36 hours. they arrest the McMichaels, and they see that there's enough probable cause for an arrest. So there is a question there. Why did it take so long for this arrest to happen? And I think, as a lot of people have pointed out, it's in the national spotlight because of the racial element of this case. But from what I've seen, I honestly don't believe that the McMichaels would be in jail right now if it wasn't for this case being in the national spotlight.
And BJ, you alluded to it, but I do want to point out that Greg McMichael, the father, the elder here of the two charged, worked as a police officer in that area and then also worked as an investigator in the prosecutor's office. So that does bring up a huge conflict of interest with anybody that worked with him in either of those departments, right?
I apologize. I think I missed part of your question. I heard
about the conflict of interest with Mr. McMichael, the elder, the father there, Greg, who worked as a police officer and then also as an investigator for the prosecutor's office. I mean, the question is going to be who has a conflict of interest and were they showing favoritism towards him?
Again, I'm not going to speculate on the intentions or the motivations behind the actions of those prosecutors, but I will say they were definitely questionable. And I think the fact that, again, like I said, charges were brought in 36 hours of the case getting to the GBI speaks volumes about how much evidence and how much probable cause has been there since this incident occurred.
I want to remind everybody that this is OpenLine, and we actually have all the lines open right now. So if you would like to call in and ask a question of one of these attorneys, now is your chance regarding this case. 615-737+ is the number. Mark, I wonder what your thoughts are on Mr. McMichael's affiliation at one time with the police department and then also with the prosecutor's office down there.
Well, my understanding is that originally Jackie Johnson, the Brunswick Judicial District DA, she handled it first because it occurred in their area, and he worked for that particular judicial district. Then it was sent to this George Barnhill of the Waycross Judicial Circuit, and it wasn't until much later, apparently, that it came up that what I understand that Mr. McMichael may have done some work for him. Now, I'll agree with everyone and the callers that there seems to be racial elements involved in this, and that it is horrible, and that video does look like he's just been hunted down. But I have not heard any proof of racial motivation in this. Now, you could say in general terms that, and I would agree that persons of color are singled out more often than not for this type of suspicious activity and this type of stuff, this type of attitudes or thoughts leads to these situations. But in this particular case, I haven't heard anything yet. And of course, you know, we don't have access to all the investigations and case files and so forth as far as whether or not the McMichaels were motivated by race in any fashion. So it's obviously very, very emotional. Yes. But I think our job as lawyers is to get past the emotions and just get to the facts.
I want to ask you about this third guy, the video guy, as a lot of folks on Facebook are calling him right now. They want to know why he's not been charged and saying that he should be for, you know, moving behind that truck that the McMichaels were in and taking this video that we're all seeing and judging right now. Mark, let's start with you. What about him? What kind of crimes could he face, and should he?
I know of no charge, nothing that he could be charged with. I mean, unless they show he somehow aided and abetted these folks, I don't see anything. I don't think that he was under any duty to go and step in and stop it. It all happened so quickly that there's no law, at least in Tennessee, that I know of, that would have required him to step in and stop it. Now, by the same token, if they somehow show he had a connection with the McMichaels and he was, you know, using the video for future reference or future evidence or whatever, then maybe there could be an argument that he somehow aided and abetted them. But based upon what I've heard so far, I just don't see that there's anything to charge this guy with.
Yeah. BJ, what are your thoughts on that?
I agree with Mark. I haven't heard anything that would lead me to think that he should be charged, and not to say that there may be some information that comes out in the future, or some information that's not known to us. As Mark has alluded to several times, we don't have all the information about this case. What his level of coordination was with the McMichaels. I believe he said he wasn't coordinating with them at all. If it comes out in the future that there was some level of coordination and there was some planning behind it, then maybe he will be charged. But again, I agree with Mark. I don't know of anything that I would say he should be charged for at this moment in time with the information available.
BJ, I'm sure that there's been much more reporting there than even there has been here in Tennessee on this case, and we've had plenty of it. But I have yet to hear how long police have had access to this video. Did they have it immediately, or did it just really come to light?
My understanding is that they've had access to this video almost immediately, if not immediately. It has recently come to light because it was leaked, but police have had access to this video for a while. Wow, that's interesting. I believe the original prosecutor, even Barnhill, even referenced it in a letter that he wrote regarding the case over a month ago.
Interesting. Okay, let's get back to the phone lines. Pamela is on the line. Pamela, thank you for your call. You can go ahead. Make sure you turn that TV down in the background so that we can hear you clearly.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Okay, well, my name is Pamela. And, you know, I've been listening to the incident that happened. And I'm just speaking for me. The gentleman that was, you know, filming the video, if we just take a look at things that go on, if something is happening, we're gonna film it. And I look as though the gentleman had the video and he was a little confused with what had happened, and then he turned the video in. So I look at it though that he was doing a good gesture. He was just a little confused when he first saw it because he couldn't believe what happened. Now what the gentleman did, the two gentlemen did, now I just look at that as just blind out, wanting to shoot someone for no reason at all. That was their motive. It was to kill somebody. That's how I look at that. Even though they may say he may have been trespassing on this property, or he went and looked at the houses. If you go to any construction site, if I go to a construction site, I'm going to walk up and I'm going to look around because I'm going to want to see what's going on and see what the rooms look like. So I look at the gentleman as he was just being curious. I didn't see where he was doing anything wrong. Those gentlemen that shot that young man, they did that intentionally. So they can't say that he was trespassing, or they can't even say that they felt like he was robbing the place. They can't say that because that is not actually what happened. That tape will tell you actually what was happening. And so when people put in other things, I'm going to just say attorneys, when they put in other things trying to make a case for the two other gentlemen, well, of course, they're going to put in stuff to make it look good for them. But the tape itself justifies what those two gentlemen did. And what those two gentlemen did, that was just cruel evil. And I'm not going to say it's a black or white thing. I'm just going to say they were evil against human nature, people.
Pamela,
just cruel.
Yeah, I think you bring up a great point on the video thing, that it's just part of our culture now when you see something to pull out your phone and start taping it. Don't you guys agree?
Absolutely.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah. Mark, you're a criminal defense attorney. So I just, you know, pretend here this case lands on your desk. The McMichaels hire you. Where do you start with this case in defending them?
Well, as I said at the beginning, I think this case involves two different parts. The first part is going to be to explain the probable cause that they had to pursue Mr. Arbery. And that has to come from the information they received about Mr. Arbery entering onto the site of the construction of the house in the neighborhood, and how soon they received information that he was there. If they received information from someone who saw that, and maybe there was a video of it, and that person did in fact match their description, then they had the authority under Georgia law to pursue him and to detain him. Now, if you can get past that point, the next question is, why were they armed? Now that brings you into Georgia law right there, which allows you to carry a shotgun or a handgun openly, even if you don't have a permit. Now, I'm guessing that the older McMichael, who was formerly in law enforcement, had a handgun carry permit, but I don't know whether or not the younger one did. But under the citizen's arrest statute, you cannot use deadly force. So you've got to get past that part of this. And even though there is a video, it doesn't show the conversation, the statements, the yelling, whatever it was that occurred between the McMichaels and Mr. Arbery. And it doesn't show what happened immediately prior to Mr. Arbery and Mr. Travis McMichael getting into the scuffle.
Yeah.
So, as I said at the beginning, if Mr. McMichael, Travis McMichael, never pointed his gun at this guy and never threatened him, just said, hey, look, we need to talk to you for a moment, then arguably, okay, and this is just arguable, then he would have a defense that when Mr. Arbery came at him and there appears to be a struggle for the weapon went off and Mr. Arbery basically caused his own demise. Now that's, remember, I'm the defense here, and that's what we're trying to do is put forth some type of legitimate defense for these two folks under Georgia law as it exists.
I've often wondered, as a defense attorney, do you ever tell your clients, even though you are entitled to a defense, you know, it's part of our U.S. Constitution, everybody has their chance to defend themselves. Do you ever say, you don't have much of a case. We need to think about other things now, other options?
Well, in every case you assess what the possible outcome is going to be, and you're going to take into consideration what the facts and the evidence is, and you will advise your client, well, I think we've got these kind of chances if we go to trial versus this or not. And that client has to make the decision on whether or not that client will accept a plea bargain. I venture to say in this particular case, I don't know what the state of Georgia is going to offer these two guys in terms of a plea bargain, but they're charged with felony murder. So it's a very, very serious offense. And, you know, based upon what I'm seeing so far, if they can plead to something, you know, much less than that, they need to take it and run with it.
All right. We're going to take a quick break. We'll come back with more of your questions in just a moment.